Good evening, everybody. My name is Ronald Onyango, and today we're going to be discussing the changes on the proposed changes on the immigration. And before I do that, just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. And thank you all for joining. Just let me know where you're joining from. Hi, Eric, I can see you there. Thank you very much. Yeah, for those who are just joining on TikTok, we'll just make sure we're going to migrate to YouTube shortly. Yes. Right. I'm on another live stream. So just on YouTube, please join us on TikTok. It's Ronald Young Consultancy because we're going to be switching everything to YouTube. Right. Thank you all very much. I think I'll make a start now because we're running about 10 minutes late. Today, the 30th of November, we're going to be looking at the proposed changes which were announced by the Home Secretary on the 20th of February, of November, sorry, with the consultation period running up to February. Today, I intend to just look at the highlights, and this is arguably the most radical immigration change that has happened in the past 50 years. And there's going to be a consultation period running throughout from the 20th of November all through to 12th of February. The session is predominantly aimed to be a community civic education awareness so that everyone is going to be familiar with the proposed changes, some good, some not so good, and with also action plans, what one can do to be able to have an impact and influence on what's happening. To give you a rundown of what we intend to cover today, just as an overview, as we wait for those who are still joining, we will be looking at highlighting the new proposed changes in depth, looking at the proposed concept, what's dubbed as the "and" settlement, which has got the four pillars described, the adjustments depending on what they are: character, integration, contribution, and residence. Then we look at the impact of what's being proposed, starting with the baseline of the 10 years. And then, of course, we look at what factors would impact, such as the penalties, and then who is going to be affected, and which are the protected areas, and of course, delve into the positive aspects of these proposed changes. There are some good things into it, as much as some will be mostly be negative from depending on where you sit. Then we look at how the penalties may increase the settlement period, and of course, analyzing some circumstances where PSW, displaced workers and skilled workers and dependents perhaps could take advantage of the new changes. We'll look at briefly on the families and dependents and impact on them, and just generally talking on the legal status and how this impacts and the timing. And of course, we'll have a Q&A session giving views on what this will look like. So this gives you a brief overview of what we intend to cover. If you're joining us for the first time, just make sure that you subscribe so that you can be kept updated next time we are online. So looking at the announcement that was made by the Home Secretary, which was dubbed a fair pathway to settlement. I'm not sure I would call it fair, but that's what the document was called. It's a over 60-page document, which I have looked at to try and summarize what this will look at. The UK government's objective essentially is to try and manage immigration under the reforms proposed in 2025, where the government aims to restrict who is allowed to come to the country, remain, settle, and that applies across all visas, be it asylum, work, family reunion, and even refugee status. The reforms actually prioritize domestic labor, raises skills thresholds for work visas, and also they'll be looking at limiting social support and residency eligibility rights for many asylum seekers, and introduce stricter removal for those who arrive and classed as unauthorized. We look at the new rules and who they are targeting. Under the reforms which are proposed, work visas would only be granted to applicants meeting what's classed as high skills and salary thresholds, essentially looking at graduate level roles rather than the broad spectrum of the lower skill category and skill shortages. So unlike before, where those would have been available, it will be focusing mostly on rewarding the higher level category of work. And also the employers seeking foreign workers for lower skilled roles, they'll need to demonstrate that there's actually a skill shortage in the market and commit to training domestic staff. The idea is that there's going to be a more focus on having the skilled worker emphasis and shifting the default to relying on imported labor. The Home Office seems to want to suggest that they can actually groom local domestic labor, and they'll be less reliant on international or foreign staff. For asylum seekers and refugees, they would receive less certainty in terms of their stay or permanent residence, unlike before. And the new system will be proposing to move towards a time-limited protection, similar to what happens in other countries like Denmark, with no automatic routes to settlement. The residency right will be limited and significantly curtailed, unlike what they had before. Also looking at family reunifications and access to welfare for them, and pathways to settlement would face much more stricter regime, potentially leaving many asylum seekers in a prolonged and uncertain limbo. The consultation seeks views and options and opinions of those who were affected. And this, starting from the baseline that has been drawn of a 10-year settlement period, they have actually set up what's known as a 10-year baseline, which will also result in increasing the qualifying period for settlement to 15 years. Before, this was ranging from 3 to 5 years. This will now move to a baseline of 10, with the potential to increase 15 years for skilled workers in roles which are below RQF level 6, which are equivalent to bachelor's degree. They'll also be implementing what's referred to as the no recourse to public funds as a condition of settlement. So best advised to keep away from benefits. After the consultation, the government will set out its preferred options, or a combination of the options to achieve its objective. What is unsettlement? This is actually the principle of unsettlement will be deemed to be one that recognizes the value of long-term contribution to the UK. It is assumed that one will be able to earn their settlement based on what activities they've been involved, rather than granting settlements after a fixed period like before. The approach they want to adopt will ensure that individuals demonstrate sustained commitments through work in the community, involvement in other meaningful contributions before one can be granted a settlement. It is considered that the new model will increase the standard qualifying period for majority settlements to 10 years. However, individuals will also be able to have an opportunity to reduce the period based on contribution to the UK economy and society. Essentially, there'll be an adjustment formula where you can actually reduce that period from to 10 being the baseline, but it can be reduced. The proposal that unsettlement will be based on a time adjustment model is built on the 4 pillars, which are designed to ensure that somebody who is applying for settlement has made meaningful contribution to the UK, and which are clear and measurable in all accounts. Just to touch on what are these 4 pillars and how do they resonate with individuals. The first one, which will be determined, will be the aspect of character. This provides a baseline that people's character will be examined and provide for the refusal application where core requirements relating to someone's character or conduct including criminal records, non-compliance with immigration requirements, and any considerations which are linked to public good, which must be met. So essentially, your character will be scrutinized more than before. And we'll give examples like applicants who have current litigation with the government or NHS, taxes or other government debts. Those will be negative points and penalties which will be deducted from your qualifying scale. It will also be mandatory to meet such requirements, and there will be no ability to trade in with other considerations to determine the qualifying period. The expectation is that one should not be able to settle if they have a criminal record or anything that is questionable. The second pillar is the integration element, where one is expected to demonstrate that they have got a meaningful integration to the society within the British society itself. And that will include things such as the language to B2 level. The other pillar, the third pillar, is what's known as the contribution, where this will reward individuals who have made a sustained and measurable economic contribution to the UK, on the principle that any such work done could accelerate one to the path of settlement quicker than before, and it will be measured on the basis of having a positive contribution to the economy. And lastly, the fourth pillar is the residence, where it will recognize lawful continuous residence in the UK, and individuals will not, however, normally qualify on the basis of residence alone as before. So all these other factors will be taken into account. The proposed criteria and reform operates in as follows. It will have something known as unsettlement principle, where it will be based on time adjustment model built on the 4 pillars I just referred to. So you will actually be earning your qualification period to settle in the UK. The issue of default qualifying period for settlement will be increased from 5 to 10 years. So that will the baseline being 10 years, unlike before when it was 5, with exceptions for certain groups of individuals. Those routes, for example, the skilled worker route that currently lead to settlement at 5 years continuously will cease to do so and will default to a qualifying period of 10 years. So that affects a majority of people, skilled worker routes, except where an earned reduction on the basis of contribution. So although the default period is going to be 10 years, but there's going to be a mechanism of actually being able to reduce it through the principle of earned reduction and integration. There will be no more separate long residence route. A consequence is that there will be no longer a separate residence route available, which, unlike before, there used to be one. And also issues of non-compliance and negative contributions. A person's pathway to settlement will depend a lot on the history of compliance with immigration laws. This may also affect their qualifying period of settlement, whether an application for settlement will be considered at all. This will impact pathways to settlements, even where breaches do not actually have consequences of resulting in outright refusal. Looking at Overstayers, where it will be judged that an overstayer should not lead to outright refusal, it will nevertheless cause the qualifying period for settlement to be increased. So in circumstances where there would actually an overstay would be refused, they would not necessarily refuse it, but it will actually be lengthened. And there's consultation currently ongoing, whether it should be 5 years, 10 years, 15, or as high as 20 years. Issues of UK illegal entry and where one originally entered the UK illegally as a visitor, this could result to settlement extended as high as 30 years. There'll be penalties for claiming public funds. The consultation seeks views on whether the qualifying period should be increased by 5 or 10 years. And there's a consultation paper, which I'll be able to show you later on to have an input. There is a question whether it should be 5 to 10 years where one has claimed public funds. Waiver of the no recourse public funds before. The proposal seeks to say that even where there has not been a breach of conditions, in some cases where the Home Office has granted you a waiver, for example, if that was given in some seconds like the victim of domestic violence, even in those cases, where there has not been a breach, it is considered that it should nevertheless be given rise to an increase in the qualifying period. So the impact is that even though one is not penalized, but I think it will have an impact in increasing the duration. There's also going to be a reassessment of benefits accruing to settlement. They are going to be looking at what are the benefits new migrants granted settlement would continue to be able to access given that time, and a proposal that benefits should only be given to one's acquisition of a citizenship. On adult dependents, economic migrants, the proposal seeks to suggest that qualifying periods for settlements for a person granted entry and stay as an adult dependent of an economic migrant will be separately determined according to their own attributes and circumstances, separate from the sponsor. The impact is that a person admitted as the dependent of an economic migrant will not necessarily enjoy the same qualifying periods for settlement as the sponsor. There are also considerations for vulnerable groups and compassionate circumstances. Currently, there are existing arrangements for settlements may be granted without being subject to minimum qualifying period in cases of an adult family member needing long-term care, domestic abuse victims, normally where the relationship has broken down due to domestic abuse, resettlement schemes, those entering the UK on settlement schemes, and also bereaved partners of UK citizens who are settled or settled persons who have died. The Home Office is consulting on whether and how an unsettlement system may be tailored for this category of vulnerable persons. And of course, there is an opportunity for you to have input into that. Transitional arrangements, which is a key thing and more relevant to a lot of people. Most people would want to understand whether or not the consultation period and if this becomes law, will it affect those who are already in the country? The consultation paper seems to suggest that actually this should not be applicable. And I'll refer you to a specific question in the consultation paper, which it is encouraged that should all take part, seems to suggest that they will not do that. So the more of you express your views that you disagree with that, it will help. The requirements of unsettlement. The working assumption is that the system should operate on a time adjustment basis model, meaning that qualifying period will be adjusted upwards and downwards from a baseline qualifying period, depending on one's circumstances of the case. As been set out in the paper, proposals to move to the system will, with the baseline of 10 years, will be subject to this consultation, which may increase from 5 years to 10 years, depending on what's applicable. Looking at an outline of how the proposed and settlement system would work, this has been set up in the paper. In a table known as Table 1, there's a minimum mandatory requirement that the application for settlement must meet. And in the Pillar 1, suitability, it is considered under the consultation point that one will be required to meet suitable requirements for an application as set out in the Part Suitability, which is what came into law on the 11th of November. For example, not having a criminal conviction. It is also going to be the case that one will not be required to have any current litigation or owe money to NHS, unpaid taxes, or any government debt not paid. On the pillar of integration, which is how much somebody is integrated to society, one will be required to evidence that they meet the English language requirement to the B2 level, as I mentioned earlier, under the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. They will also be required to show evidence that they have passed the life in the UK test. So that seems remains to be the case as important. There's no change there. However, what's changed there is the English language, which is now moving to the B2 as part of the Pillar 2 for integration. The third pillar is on contribution. Again, there's still ongoing consultation on this. And by the way, just to make you aware that there's no consultation on this part of integration, and there's no consultation more required on the suitability. Those have been confirmed will be the case. However, we have consultation on the contribution aspect, whereby one will be required to contribute to the exchequer by having earned an annual salary of at least 12,570 per annum for a minimum period of 3 to 5 years, which is still subject to consultation, which is in line with the current threshold for the paying income tax. So as you can see, there's some aspects which there will be no more consultation, but some will have consultation. Then we move at the qualifying period for the unsettlement under Table 2. The second pillar here, what considerations will reduce? As I said, there'll be those which will increase the period, and some which will reduce. The baseline is 10, but some things may actually reduce it. We have contributions. If someone is employed in the public service, applicants who are employed in specific roles for a period of 5 years, such as state school teachers, doctors and nurses, or professional roles of that nature in the public service, they will have up to a minus of 5 years. So you can see that somebody in that profession could actually have their qualifying period reduced by half. Given the baseline is 10 years, the Pillar 2 contribution will actually minus 5 years, which means they could actually qualify for their indefinite leave to remain within 5 years. The other attribute is community service. Applicants who are working in the community service, volunteering, the adjustment to the baseline qualifying period is between 3 and 5 years. So looking at the baseline of 10, you can have between 3 and 5 years reduced. If you've done voluntary service for 3 years, you'll have 3 years reduced, which means you can qualify in 7 years. Or if you've done voluntary service for 5 years, then you could have a time period reduced from 10 to minus 5, which is 5 years. Then the other pillar is entry and residence. Applicant holds a permission as a parent, where somebody holds a permission as a parent, partner, child, or British citizen, and meet core family requirements. This is not subject to any consultation and remains the same. However, adjustment to baseline qualifying period is minus 5, and this is not subject to consultation. Hence, the baseline is 10 with an adjustment of 5 years, so they will be able to proceed on the normal 5 years. So there's no consultation on that. The attribute where applicant holds a permission granted under the British National Overseas Route. Again, this is not subject to consultation and remains with adjustment of 5 years, so they'll qualify within the 5 years as normal. Looking at the contribution aspect, where someone has been in receipt of public funds for less than 12 months. These are attributes which will actually increase the baseline. So we have the baseline of 10, and somebody has been in receipt of public funds, i.e., for instance, claim benefits for 12 months and below the resettlement. This will actually have an adjustment impact to the baseline qualifying period to +5. So 10 plus 5. So actually, they'll be qualifying in 15 years. The other attribute which can increase your qualifying period is where applicant has been in receipt of public funds for more than 12 months. Remember, that was less than 12 months. If you had public funds for more than 12 months during the route to settlement, the adjustment to the baseline will be +10 years. So essentially meaning that you'll be qualifying in 20 years. So 10 plus 10. The another adjustment pillar is on entry and residence. How did you enter the country? This will also have an impact on increasing the qualifying settlement route. If the applicant arrived in the UK illegally and via a small boat or a clandestine mode, the adjustment to baseline qualifying period is +20 years. So you can see here the 10 years plus 20 years. So any illegal entrant in that particular mode will be qualifying in 30 years. Where the applicant entered the UK on a visitor's visa, an adjustment to baseline will be +20, meaning that the 10 years baseline plus 20, again, they'll be getting their indefinite leave to remain on the long resident out of 30 years. The other attribute is where the applicant has overstayed a permission for 6 months or more. The adjustment period is +20 years, meaning the baseline of 10 plus 20 is 30. Now, looking at all those things, we're looking at what is an overview of how it affects someone. And just trying to analyzing, given all these scenarios and the permutations, how the new proposed baseline will work. What exactly are the proposed changes with the UK settlement? The general proposal, as I mentioned, looks at increasing the baseline qualifying period for ILR from 5 to 10 years for most study and work-based routes. The increase is not a flat increase, but a point-based adjustable system deemed as earned settlement and can either increase or decrease depending on the one circumstances for purpose of qualifying for the settlement. What will be taken into account includes your immigration history, as I mentioned before, how you entered into the country and how you managed their stay in the country. Your annual salary and income, there is a starting point, what that will have an impact. The job sector one is working into, public service will have the impact of reducing the time. Your English language to the correct level. If you got the B2 level, again, that will help in reducing the time. And whether or not one has utilized the public funds. And lastly, your involvement in the community volunteering participation. Activation points and dates. As I mentioned earlier, this is a consultation period. It will carry on. It started from November 20th, and it will run until 12th of February 2026. And thereafter, the government will review the responses, which we hope most of you will contribute to them, and formulate the changes into immigration rules amendment around perhaps mid-year in 2026. It may be something that people are wondering whether and how the changes affect me, and as I'm already in the UK, who does it affect? Yes, the changes will affect all those who are already in the UK without ILR status. If you look at the consultation paper on page 4 of 60 of the consultation note, the document called Fair Pathway to Settlement Proposal, which is a document that's been circulated by the Home Secretary. I quote what they say, which to indicate to you that obviously this is intended to apply to everybody. And I'm going to quote, it says, crucially, for this and every other group mentioned here, we propose to apply these changes to everyone in the country today who has not already received indefinite leave to remain. This would mean that those who are due to resettlement in the coming months and years would be subject to the new requirements for unsettlement as soon as our immigration rules have changed. That's an extract from the consultation note on page 4 of the document, which clearly goes to suggest that there is every intention that it will apply to everybody in the country. I was seeking to understand whether there is any clarification on whether there are any transitional protection. This is quite important because there are people who are already in the country. They may be already on a particular route. And the question would be, will these rules apply to them, given that they're already embarking on a particular route? Looking at the document and the manner in which it's been framed, transitional arrangements refer to temporary measures which are designed to ease the impact of any new rules for those already in the UK and on an existing pathway to settlement. Essentially saying that this transition should allow people who are already there not to be affected. However, looking at the document, you can deduce from the government's attitude towards this in the consultation note that the surveys, the question on page 3, page 3 of 60, and it's question 3. The governments ask a question, which I would like you to look at later on. To what extent do you agree or disagree that there should not be a transitional arrangement for those already on a pathway? This is a double negative question, which goes to suggest the government is already positioning itself that we do not want to have a transition, but do you agree or disagree with that? So when completing this form, I would encourage you to all look at this question carefully. It's a tricky question, and please make sure that you put it in the correct manner so that you're not tricked by it. Because the government has said, to what extent do you agree or disagree that there should not be? And I think we should all be saying that we disagree. We disagree because if you say you agree, then you'll be affirming. It's a double negative question, which can be tricky. So make sure you pay attention to that particular question in the consultation note, which I will be encouraging most of you to complete it and send it, as it will have an impact on the outcome. Now, looking at the point, you may wonder whether are there going to be any exceptions to those protected from the 10-year rule? Is this proposal going to apply to everybody? And the answer is actually in the document. There are specific groups protected and will not be affected by the 5-year rule. And that's on the page 24 of the document, 24 of 60. And it says, specific routes of entry and residence, including those admitted as partner, parent, or child of a British citizen and have held the status of that during the qualifying period, or as a holder of Hong Kong British national, will attract a reduction in the qualifying period. These groups will therefore be able to settle after 5 years, as they can now, subject to the mandate. So they'll not be affected. They'll be protected. Those are the protected groups I mentioned. To summarize these groups who are protected, just for clarity, spouses and partners of British citizens under Appendix FM, they'll qualify under the 5-year settlement, which remains unchanged. Those who already have an ILR status or settled person, including EU settlement scheme persons, again, they will not be affected. Parents or children of British citizens who have held that status for the duration of the qualifying period, again, they will not be affected. Holders of Hong Kong British nationals, visa migrants, 5 years to settlement, again, that remains unchanged. Those who are under the Windrush scheme beneficiaries, they will not be affected. And of course, the global talent visa holders, that remains 3 years for settlement. It's also unchanged. Innovator founder visa holders, again, that is 3 years, remains unchanged. And refugees and those with humanitarian protection, that will not be changed. Then, Who is this going to be subjected to? Who is or will the new rules be subjected to for the baseline qualifying period? We look at some people who will definitely be affected. Who does this apply to? The immigration pathways to 10, where 10 years baseline will apply, will include this following. Most family routes applications, except spouses of British citizens, they will apply. So most family routes, except those ones, spouses of British citizens, they will not apply to them. However, it will apply to health and care workers. It will apply to skilled workers, all levels, unless in medium skilled roles, scale-up workers, international sportsperson, and Ministry of Religion. Then we go to the most common question: how are care workers going to be impacted, and other medium skilled roles with this particular new proposal? Those in roles normally categorized as below RQF level 6, normally below degree level, will face longer baseline periods. They will face 15 years and not 10 years. There's a distinction. The baseline is 10, but if your role is below the RQF level 6, they will be subjected to the 15 years and not 10 years. Those affected include care workers, senior care workers, health and care workers roles at RQF 3 to 5. This will be balanced by the fact that they can reduce the 15 years waiting time to 10 or 5 by volunteering or other meaningful contributions. Remember, on the adjustment scale I explained earlier. So although it's going to be based on the 15 years, but there will be an opportunity to be able to reduce them from that to a lower region, depending on what activities. Then next question is, how can one reduce their qualifying period for settlement by migrant? How will they be able to do this? There will be trigger criteria which can be opted for, which includes the volunteering options, community service for 3 years. That can reduce up to 3 years. So if you want to reduce your baseline of 10, you can do volunteering work or community service for 3 years, and that will entitle you to have a reduction of 3 years. Possible settlement time for that will be 7 years, as you'll have earned 3 years from that route. Another trigger point is the degree level, C1 degree level advanced English. That will reduce 1 year, hence giving you a settlement of 10 minus 1 is 9. The command paper states that the migrants will not be able to add up. Just to know that add up, there was a question of people wondering whether can I add from different areas. You cannot add up different discounts, and you'll only be able to select one that best gives you the highest reduction. Now, issue of public service. It would be good to examine what will qualify as public service, or that would be able to entitle one to earn the settlement reduction. Public service will include jobs at RQF level 6 or above. Any job within the public sector that is a degree level, we should include roles like social workers, the police, fire, and emergency, NHS doctors, nurses, and allied health professionals, and also teachers at state schools, teachers and senior teaching assistants. So not just any job will qualify. Those are the specific jobs that will qualify for those reductions. Then also in terms of volunteering and community service, what would qualify for the parcel and settlement? It's important to know what will this entail. This will be any unpaid work, genuine volunteering, and not disguised work which is getting paid. It has to be genuine work and not disguised paid work. Also, it must be regular and documented with registered charities, community groups, or those organizations that are recognized, such as charity work, youth programs, food helping in food banks, homeless shelters, community centers, and environmental projects. You will need to volunteer for 3 to 5 years to get a reduction. So it's not just going for a short time. It will be 3 to 5 years before you'll be able to get the benefit of that. Now, one may be wondering whether one is going to be required to prove 3 years of consecutive high salary to qualify for a reduction, or can this be scattered? Because obviously, if you can see if high salary qualifies, given that one of the ways for reducing this is earning a salary. To qualify, you must be on a higher salary taxpayer, earning 50,270 for 3 consecutive years immediately prior to making your application for ILR, not just any 3 years. So you can, if you're going to be able to utilize this reduction, you'll need to show that you've earned 50,270 for a consistent 3 years prior to application. When it comes to how the reduction operates, is it possible for one to combine them, such as volunteering and also having a high salary to maximize time of reduction? Because maybe that you are doing some voluntary work, but you also have a high salary. The proposal suggests that you cannot combine the reductions. You may only utilize one reduction, whichever one gives you the highest years reduction or combination. And as an example, a migrant who earns 65,000 per year for 3 consecutive years, they will qualify for a 5 years reduction because it's over the 50,270. This particular migrant also has passed English language at C1 level English, which normally gives -1 year. The same migrant also volunteered for 5 years and hence qualified for -5 years. So those are 10 years in 11 years. This migrant can only claim the highest, which is -5, once for the entire application. So even though they've done 3 different things, they met the requirement on the salary, they met the requirement on the English language at C1 level, and they've also volunteered for 5 years, which individually looks like there's a -5, a -1, and a -5. But the way the formula would work is you choose one of the highest and apply it. Hence, on the baseline of 10 years qualifying period, they'll -5 and qualify after 5 years. The other question is, which I think I've answered, whether one can combine more than one reduction. How to reduce settlements. This is actually how it works. If you want to know how to reduce settlement, there's the way one can do that. It is possible to reduce your settlement waiting time by combining the reduction. Yes, it is. It is not possible, but you can only utilize one reduction, whichever is the biggest. And I gave examples. For instance, John has an English language in C1, which is 1 year. He's also volunteered for 5 years at the local community library for 5 years. And he works for an IT firm, earning £65,000 per year for the last 3 years. The salary of 65,000 qualifies John for -5 years. The English language qualifies John for -1 year. The volunteering role at the library gives John -5. But John can only claim -5, as explained earlier. You cannot combine them. Now, having discussed all that, there's some good news that I thought I should just mention. This for PSW holders, displaced workers, skilled workers, and dependents. Looking at the self-sponsorship as an example, Entrepreneur wrote, this, if planned properly, between 6 and 12 months normally, it is possible that one can be able to earn a decent salary within the required level and be able to fast track their qualifying period from 10 to actually 3 years. So given the baseline of that, so it is possible that one can, if you earn the salary of over 50,000 and above, it will give you a certain qualifying period. But if you're earning 125,000, it will give you even more deduction on it. Self-sponsorship can be structured to be a legitimate business. It must be a business that's legitimate, not established simply for the purpose of circumventing the immigration. The type of business can be any consultancy, business, recruitment, restaurant, real estate, hair salon, and business logistics. It doesn't really matter. Timing and strategy is very important. Normally, most people want to wait until they've got about 2 or 3 months left. It is recommendable to start early. Perhaps somebody who's on a PSW can start this on their 12th month of being back on that visa, so they can have enough time to plan, given that you'll have 18 months to plan. Normally, we find that most people will wait until last minute and then they embark on this route, which there'll be not enough time to prepare. Somebody on a study route, pick up your course properly. Benefits that, if you're thinking which route you can follow, again, you can, as I mentioned, you can go on the skilled self-sponsorship route. One can also consider going as a student. Pick your course correctly. The benefits of this is that, of course, it's secure. You're not relying on a sponsor. Get the timing right. If you go through a 10-year route, subject to the course you're doing, 3 years undergraduate, you can do a master's research program. And of course, after that, you'll be able to get also a PSW of 18 months. If you're working as a couple, it may be that one of you is a student, the other one embarks on a particular entrepreneurship route, so that there may be benefits of having an insurance in case one of the other routes is not so productive. Looking at the family life route. Family life is where a student or anyone can consider this route if they have a relationship with the following eligible persons. The person can be either a British citizen, an EU settled person in the UK, such as ILR or permanent residence, a refugee, or humanitarian protection or skilled worker. So this is also a very popular and most common route people can consider. If you live in the UK, and you manage to form a genuine relationship, then of course this is a route that one can consider. There's also the spouse route, husband, wife, and civil partner or unmarried partner, including same-sex partners. Critical thing here is that one would need to prove that there is a genuine and subsisting relationship. There's also the financial requirement, which changed from October 2025, and the new minimum now is 29,000 minimum annual income gross. If somebody has got cash instead, then you need to have a cash of 101 or 2,500 in the bank. The financial requirement for children under the new rules, the threshold is flat. There's no extra amount per child, and the English language is required. The other one is as a fiancé or a proposed civil partner. It is also possible that one can sponsor another for a 6-month visa to marry or enter into a civil partnership in the UK. The applicant must, however, switch to a visa for spouse or marriage within that period. It is also possible under the family route to consider a parent. A parent can actually sponsor a child under 18 to join them in the UK. And in limited circumstances, a British child or settled child under 18 can sponsor a parent. This is where the child actually ends up being the one that sponsors their parent. Adult dependent relatives, elderly parents, grandparents, or other relatives needing long-term personal care due to the age, illness, or disability can also qualify. However, they must prove that care cannot be provided or afforded in their own country. And lastly, refugees and humanitarian protection, as one can sponsor their immediate family members under the family reunion rules and the immigration rules part 11. However, the applicants in this case are exempt from the financial requirements, and there's no charge for family reunion application. Having looked at all that, we realize that actually the rules that have been set are still at the consultation stage. And I wanted to encourage all of you to look at the document which has been posted, which I can share with you, and go through it. And if you can make your own contributions, those views will be very helpful in making the office formulate their own conclusions. And it's important that obviously your views are heard, and I've referred you to the question 3, which is important to recognize that you want to make sure that this transition stage is not to the double negative as explained there. The legal status of this document is still a proposal. They are not laws yet, and the implementation will require formal changes to the immigration rules. The proposals will be subject to a public consultation, as I've explained, later this year, and you may participate by signing the relevant petitions to express your views. It is open to anyone who wishes to do so and express their views, including individuals or organizations and other stakeholders, so that they may be taken into account to make sure that they are heard. We've covered all that, and hopefully that will help. I wanted just to draw your attention to the consultation survey, so that when you look at the document, please look at page 40 to 53 of the consultancy survey, Annex B, and the specific question which you need to look at and answer correctly is the one that answer, to what extent do you agree or disagree that there should not be a transition arrangement for those already on the pathway to settlement? The transition arrangement refers to temporary measures which are designed to ease the impact of those new rules. And the options are: option A, you strongly agree; option B, you strongly disagree; option B, you agree; option C, neither agree nor disagree; and option D, disagree; option E, strongly disagree; and F, don't know. I suppose the correct one would be strongly disagree, as from my own perspective, because obviously being a double negative question, make sure you answer correctly. You strongly disagree with that, which would go to establish that we actually prefer the transition provision to be left in place. Having gone through that, my own views on this is that the government's and settlement plans clearly, in my own opinion, discriminates against South Asians, Africans, and Caribbean migrants, who make up a vast majority of those on the existing 10-year route to settlement. If you look at the intersection and correlation between this, racism and classism is clear, with the government making it obvious that they consider lower paid work to be less valuable and worthwhile, hence quicker routes for those on specific sectors that are earning a lot more. By curtailing asylum rights, limiting residence, raising barriers to work, and restricting family reunifications, the UK would inadvertently create a two-tier population, i.e. for the well-protected ones who are highly skilled, and a large group with minimal rights who are deep uncertainty. So there's a two-tier system. Some groups, including migrants and rights advocates, now drawn a direct distinction and similarity between of this comparison with what's going on in the US, arguing that the UK is rapidly veering towards a similar and compromising approach on migrants. This shift reflects a broader transformation in immigration policies and attitude, from one which was previously of openness and multiculturalism towards one of control, restriction, and prioritizing national interests over humanitarian commitments. Whether this amounts to a long-term policy, rest or temporary response to political pressure, this remains to be seen. But what's clear is that the debate on who belongs to Britain and on what term has entered a new, far more contested phase. Thank you very much for that. And I'll now invite, if there are any questions on the document, you'll also be able to get the link if you want to be able to comment, but I want to just be able to take any questions on the same. Thank you. I'm not sure if there are any questions that I should look at. Yeah, somebody's asking what changes are there for the spouse. I have mentioned for the spouses, there will be no changes. Those are the protected categories, which will not be affected. That's on the document I referred to earlier. The spouses section under the family, page 34. They will not be affected at all. The 5 years route still remains to be the case. I know it's been a long document, which I tried to condense it as much as possible, and I hope that it makes sense. I would strongly encourage all of you to also make your views heard, so that at least when come 12th of February next year, they'll be able to take your views into account. If you got any questions on YouTube, please type your question there, then I'll be able to read it and respond to it. Somebody's asking that they have a question, that they have an LLB degree, they've never used it. Is it a good idea to do an IA level 1 exam? I presume you want to be able to practice as a lawyer. Yes, of course, I would encourage you to do that, so that you're registered with the OISC, and to be able to give you the accreditation to be able to practice law. Alternatively, you may also consider going to law school and do the LPC course and be able to practice in that regard as well. Right. If there are no further questions, thank you very much. We were hoping to do this for 45 minutes. We've gone slightly over. I thank you very much. And if you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch. My details are on there. Again, you can drop me a WhatsApp message and I'll be happy to clarify anything. Thank you very much all, and I wish you all, please do make sure to participate on the consultation, sharing your views. If you need the link for that particular thing, I'll be happy to share it. Thank you.